Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kobe. Welcome back to FloRc, and today we're gonna have episode 2 of a Let's Talk, guys. So, what are we gonna talk about today? So today we're gonna talk about flying other people's airplanes. Okay. So I know everybody's had the opportunity to fly their best friend's plane at the field, or test fly somebody's plane, or just take it out for a spin, a couple laps. But there's actually a lot more to it other than just flying the airplane. When I fly other people's airplanes, I like to take into account a lot of things. Okay, so I'm gonna take an account to before I accept whether I'm gonna fly this airplane or not. Two, how I get used to the airplane in under a minute, and then three, the aftermath, and yeah. So let's get right into it, guys. So the first thing that happens is somebody's like, "Hey, man, I got this. Let's make it big, okay? Because foamies doesn't really matter. Stuff under $500 shouldn't really be too much of an issue. But when we're talking about giant scale airplanes and 35% airplanes that are worth questionable amount of money, you have to ask yourself whether it's worth it to fly, right? Because at this point in my RC kind of in the hobby, for me, I've been around so long that I've flown basically like everything there is to fly, every type of airplane, jet, seaplane, giant scale. I've probably flown 20 or 25 different types of giant scale. I've flown it. I've flown it all. So once you get to that point, you can kind of just look at an airplane, and with the knowledge that you already have, you can tell yourself how it's going to fly. You can look at the control surfaces. You can look at the expo and the radio, and kind of tell yourself how it's going to fly, right? But for people that don't, we're gonna get into how to get used to an airplane pretty quickly. Okay, so yeah, so you have to ask yourself if it's worth it or not. If you're flying a carton that's built by a pro builder that's worth 10 to 15 grand, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it to fly in case something happens? Like, have I already flown an airplane like this before? How close am I to the person? What is the exchange going to be if something happens mechanically or it's my fault? You have to ask yourself all those questions, okay? Especially when you're getting up into the really expensive airplanes. So yeah, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? For me, what I do is, if it's one of my best friend's airplanes, I know the people that I trust in setting up their own airplanes, and I trust that nothing's going to be wrong with the airplane once they hand me the controls, right? So you have to ask yourself if you trust this person's mechanical knowledge on if they built it. So that's very important, okay? So if I've already flown 20 of the same airplanes, then and somebody who I don't know asks me, "Hey, like, do you want to fly it? Do you want to try it?" Usually I'm just gonna say, "Oh, like, I can watch you fly it, maybe give you some setup tips, but I'm okay for right now." And the reason I do that is because I already know how the airplane flies. Like, I've already flown plenty of them. I might have owned one, So it's not worth it for me to take a gamble just to fly a plane that I've already flown multiple different models of it, right? So yeah, so you have to trust in their setup, and you have to ask yourself, is it worth it to fly if you haven't flown it already? Maybe it's a brand new airplane that just came out, and somebody has it at the field first. Maybe a new Flex Innovations or a new Horizon Hobby airplane, or even a new Extreme Flight. So that is the airplanes that I enjoy, to try and take the sticks and see how it feels, because they're new airplanes. I haven't experienced it before, the new technology and stuff like that. So those are the airplanes that I would usually accept. I love to try out new things and see what the industry's at with the way that it flies. So yeah. So now that you said, okay, like yeah, for sure, let's fly it, right? Um, this is how I get used to a new airplane. Okay, so let's get onto the sim with my trusty airplane, right? My trusty my edit on Real Flight 9. I know how this flies, okay? So, but let's just say we don't. So I would take it off, and let's say they give it to me in the air. I would tell them give it to me in the highest rate possible, okay? That's for me only. That is a big thing that I do, okay? You do not need to do that. Usually you want to start out in maybe mid-rate, and at most mid-rate if you're not comfortable with the airplane, okay? Because as soon as you try and do something and then you miss the snap and then you're not used to the controls, things can pile up, and that's when stuff happens, okay? So you want to be very careful on which rate you want to get handed the controls in, okay? So I usually say high rate because I can handle myself, and I've flown for a while, so I say, hey, give it to me in high rates, okay? So the first thing I would do is you can feel the throttle response depending on if it's a gas airplane or electric airplane, doesn't matter, but you can instantly feel the power band, the power curve, all that stuff as soon as you get handed the transmitter and you start playing around, because that's the first thing you're gonna notice. Okay, so once I understand the power and how the power comes on and stuff like that, I'm gonna go around and usually I'll do a snap, and obviously I missed it because I've never flown this airplane before, right? So I'd usually just do a couple snaps here and there, feel how the airplane feels. And this is going to tell me two things, okay? So this is going to tell me how much of, or actually it's going to tell me a couple things, okay? So it's going to tell me their rates, it's going to tell me their expo, and it's also going to tell me the CG of the airplane by just doing one maneuver, okay? So that's going to tell me a lot of things in just, 5 seconds of doing a couple snap variations, okay? And obviously you're not low when you do this. So I'll do maybe a couple negative snaps, positive snap, and then you can kind of feel it out, right? Go up, maybe do a hammerhead, okay? And just kind of feel out the airplane before you really start kind of digging into it, if you're comfortable with that, if that's the reason that you're flying it, right? So, but the most important part of flying somebody else's airplane is really not to get all enveloped in your head that it's somebody else's airplane and I really need to take care, okay? So I'm not saying that you shouldn't care, because you should respect their airplane because they're letting you borrow it, okay? They're trusting you with their baby, A lot of us have connections to our airplanes, and we're letting somebody else fly it. So you need to respect their airplane. But the way that you're going to make mistakes and not have fun and not really understand the feeling of how the airplane flies is if you're in your own head saying, hey, oh my gosh, like I'm flying somebody else's airplane, this is worth so much, he spent 500 hours building it, like talk to him, enjoy, say, oh, I really like how this feels, oh wow, it's really crispy, what servos, like just kind of get out of your own head saying that you're flying somebody else's airplane. But again, you need to also have that respect. Okay, so yeah, so that's what I go through when thinking about flying somebody else's airplane. I know it's a really it's another touchy subject because there's a lot of things that people have their own rules about, like their own moral conduct or moral code about borrowing airplanes or flying other people's airplanes. But that's just how I go about my way of having fun flying somebody else's airplane. So yeah, so let's just go over it in a nutshell. So is it worth it to fly the plane? Do you trust the person that built it? And do you trust the airplane? Okay. And then what we need to do is you need to get the airplane, It's either you're gonna take it off yourself or you're gonna go up high, and then they're gonna give it to you. Okay, so and then if you're comfortable with flying to a higher level, do a couple snaps. Okay, that'll help you feel out the airplane. It'll tell you a lot of things about the airplane before you start kind of messing around. Okay, and then the third thing is just have fun but have that respect. Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Yeah, so stay tuned for more Let's Talk episodes, real flight tutorials. Yeah, and I live stream 2 times a day. So I live stream at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on Facebook Live, and then also 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern on Facebook Live at Kobe Canton. So thank you guys so much for watching. Smash that like button, share it, and smash that subscribe button. All right, I'm out, guys.